Well, welcome to the Blueprints. I am joined by the Honorable Nushin Sayfie. Um, I'll give a very brief background, Judge, because I think it's probably relevant for these purposes.
Okie doke.
So Judge Sayfie was a assistant public defender here in Miami-Dade County for 14 years, and then she took the circuit court bench and served in criminal, I believe it was back in 2007, and then was
Yes.
our chief judge from I think 2021 to 2025. And Judge, I think it's pretty. As we were talking offline, I think it's pretty appropriate that one of my biggest mentors is also going to be the first guest on this sort of series that I'm doing. And the concept behind the series is pretty simple. Um, Whenever one of us appears in front of a judge, there's always an email that goes out, and it's like, well, tell me what you know about this judge. And I sort of have gotten tired of, particularly this day and age, where we have the opportunity to bring that answer directly to people of narratives that I didn't feel were accurate, and or I was like, well, let me just go ask the question. So it's pretty short form in terms of I won't keep you here for the next 30, 45 minutes. But really three questions. All right. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So the first question that I have is why did you get into law? Why did you become a lawyer?
So before I answer, I just want to say thank you for the honor of being your first guest. And also, I think the fact that you're even doing this demonstrates not just why you were a great mentee, but how you're now paying it forward and are a good mentor, because it's something we say all the time, get to know your tribunal, get to know your judge, but you're helping people do it in a way that is new, is innovative, and is going to be tremendously helpful, especially in an era when we're not in court in person as much as we used to be. But okay, back to your question, which I love to answer this question because the short answer is my parents. I guess the shorter answer is probably my dad a little bit more than my mom. And a lot of it has to just do with what is sort of a typical American story. And it really comes back to being the child of immigrants who came to this country. And as a result of their coming here from a country, Iran, which at that time, this is before the revolution, but it was already a country that did not have, free speech, and didn't have the rights that we enjoy here, or the opportunities we enjoy here, even though it's gotten worse. So at a very early age, I was told how lucky I am to be an American. And I also didn't just, hear it. My parents walked the walk. And I grew up very proud to be American, but also very proud to be Iranian. And I think that I loved the fact that, I was living in a country where you could be from anywhere else. In fact, everyone is from somewhere else for the most part, and yet you were still American. But for my father, it really came down to opportunities and freedom. He was big on civil rights. I was born in 1968, so there was a lot going on in the country. And I remember at a very young age, just being, sitting down and watching TV and having these discussions as a family, probably earlier than I could fully understand or should have understood. But being exposed to all that and just feeling enormous, like in my cells, gratitude for the Constitution. And I think then as I got into grade school and started learning about, American history in my social studies classes, and then really fifth grade was the culmination where I had a teacher who made me the attorney general of the class, fifth grade class government. And at that point, I think the seeds were sown. And for me, being a lawyer meant being in the courtroom. So I think from the time I was 10 years old, if I wasn't going to be a veterinarian and save animals, it was completely the other extreme, and I was going to be a lawyer, and I was going to be a courtroom lawyer. Even before I fully understood what that meant, I knew that I wanted to be in a courtroom. So that's sort of the short, long answer.
Okay, okay. Well, then I guess that leads me to my next question, which I think shapes when you go in front of a judge. I always want to know why they want to be a lawyer. The second question I want to know is why'd you become a judge?
So that's a little bit more of just a practical answer. It's a very different journey for me than for, I think, a lot of people who sort of see themselves as judges. And it's funny because from the earliest moment of me being a lawyer, I was lucky. I was at the public defender's office. I was in court every day. I probably spent more time with judges than I did with, any other career on the planet. And certainly more time than, when you're a trial lawyer, you're spending more time in court than you do with your own family. So I was comfortable in front of judges, and I was very familiar from the standpoint of, being a lawyer. You see what they're doing. So there's definitely a piece of you that's like, on the days when the judge is annoying you, you're like, oh, I can do that. But I really never had, I never got to the point where I wanted to be a judge. I was really loving being a lawyer. I enjoyed being a lawyer. I was trying big cases and I was supervising young lawyers, and it was just a sort of a, perfect mix of what I wanted to do. But then at that particular time, I had an opportunity to apply for a circuit court vacancy. And I had, over the course of a weekend, it was like a Sunday afternoon, I had a big conversation with a few people and with myself, whether I wanted to take this chance and go for it. And to me, it was a great moment that I look back on, because I am a type A planner. I don't know that I'm a Marianne Curtis type A planner, but I'm definitely a type A planner. And when you describe like the way you think about your life and where it's going, I was the first part of my life for sure. I was like that. I was not one to go off road. I don't consider myself someone who's I like to be as prepared as possible and have plan A, plan B, plan C. The lesson I learned in applying to become a judge was sometimes you got to go plan D. Sometimes you have to look up and see, or go off road and see what opportunities come your way and be able to take advantage of them. And I did, and I got appointed, and I don't regret it at all. There's definitely a piece of me that misses being a trial lawyer. I think I'll always miss being a trial lawyer, but the opportunity to serve the public in this way has been remarkable, and I'm very, very lucky, and I'm grateful. And it's just, to be sort of part of this Constitution in a way that when I was a little kid, like, seeing it all come to life and see the connection between, who we are today and what we do today back, 250 years is cool. And it's really just every day is definitely, even the bad days are gratifying for me. So I have no regrets at all.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, Judge, the third question that I think I would always want to know is, and there's a little bit of an explanation here, right? Is what do you want litigants to know before they come before you? About you, about the process, about your judicial philosophy. And I think one of the things that's so special to me that you're the first guest is that, I mean, yes, I get it. The answer is, we're going to follow the law and like all of that stuff, but I know you're going to give sort of the real answer, right? Which is, what do we need to know about? Because you're all human. And I think that's sometimes some things that we forget. And so as a former college basketball player, the question was know your personnel. And so when I go into a courtroom, it's, well, know my audience. So I'm interested in how you would answer that.
So, and it's funny that you just sparked something in my brain. So I'm going a little bit off road on my answer. When you
Do
said
it.
know your personnel, I remember my first day at the public defender's office. Our boss back then, it was Bennett Brummer was in charge of the office, but David Weed was the one who was, the wrangler of all the baby lawyers. And he said, when you go to court, you need to get to know the bailiff, get to know the corrections officers, get to know the clerks, treat them well, get to know these people are your friends. And it was funny because I didn't, my experience at that point was somewhat limited. And that advice was absolutely gold. And it's funny because then years later, when I was applying to become a judge, I remember the interpreters coming to me as sort of a collective group and saying, hey, we want to write a letter for you to the governor.
Mm.
And when I got appointed and I had my one-on-one with the governor, he brought up the fact that I had a letter from the court interpreters. And I don't know if that made the difference or not, but that impressed upon him that, something that was important. Because, we all walk around saying, oh, we're humble, we're respectful. And it was an opportunity for me to show that I actually was that person, because these people were my friends and my family in that courtroom. And I think that is enormously important. And I think it's a great lesson for people to learn. I think a lot of lawyers go into court and they forget that it's not just you and the judge. There's all these other sort of cogs in this important wheel. They're all important and they all make the wheels turn. And you never know what influence these people have on the judge. And you don't know that the judge isn't paying attention to how you treat them. So to me, listen, it's the old golden rule, right? You got to treat everybody with respect. So that's one little piece I would say, especially again in an era when lawyers are not going into court as much in person. You really, when you do go, you really need to, give yourself extra time, go in there and get the lay of the land, get to know all those people, because those people will more. I can't even think of how many times I feel like I was sort of saved by a clerk or by an interpreter or by a probation officer, corrections officer. Those people will really help you out, the people in court. But I think in terms of knowing the judge, listen, what you're doing right now is enormously helpful, right? Because you're giving people hopefully some insight. Judges are definitely human beings. Obviously, it's important to be prepared. I can't imagine any judge saying that they don't think it's going to be important to be prepared. I I feel very comfortable telling lawyers what I know and what I don't know, especially for now. I'm in probate. I've been there for the last year, and I came in there knowing nothing about probate, nothing about estates, nothing about probate litigation. Somebody mentioned rule of perpetuities not long ago. I'm like, wait, that was like in law school. Like I
First
crammed
year
it
law
for the
school.
bar exam. I don't remember if I know that anymore. So it's been great. It's been a great education, but I feel very comfortable just telling the lawyers, this is what I know and this is what I don't know. That's not to say that I'm not smart. It's not to say, it's just me. I'm letting you know where I need to be educated, where I'm welcoming the education, where I'm doing research. I tend to be a judge that the minute you walk into the courtroom, I'll tell you what I've read, what I've reviewed, and I'll tell you where my head is at. Not because I don't have an open mind to everything you're about to tell me, but I'm trying to give you some sort of roadmap to where to go and where to spend your time. And I think as a lawyer, I always felt like it was so important to read the judge and know what the judge was thinking. And if the judge asked a question, again, you need to be prepared and have your plan. But when the judge asks the question, answer the question. 99.9% of the time, you better have an answer. And if you don't, you better let the judge know you'll get an answer fast. But answer the question rather than the response that sometimes I've seen, which is, oh, I'm going to get to that. Or the question is sort of a general question about the case, but there's one particular motion on today, and the lawyer says, "Oh, well, I didn't know we were going to be discussing that today." But to me, those are all important. Look, I've done what I can to get to know your entire case, so I may ask a question that, in your mind, isn't relevant to today's motion. But if I'm asking the question, obviously it's relevant in my mind. So it's just really important to listen carefully to what people are saying in the courtroom, what the lawyers or what your opponents are saying, but definitely what the judge is saying, and read the judge's signals. Again, I think that that's sort of what everyone, you kind of know that, but the lawyers that are the best are the ones that just hone in on that. And again, I think it's important when you're going into court. If the judge starts out, I'm fairly active, I'm going to ask questions. Don't be annoyed by that. If the judge is the finder of fact and the judge is asking questions, they get to do that. We get to do that, and I get it. I get that it can be annoying because you were thinking you were going to ask all the questions and now the judge is asking some questions. But so I'll tell you up front, I will confess that I do when I'm the trier of fact. Maybe it's the frustrated trial lawyer in me. I will ask questions at the end of your direct, at the end of your cross. If I feel like there's something that hasn't been answered and I need the answer to that question to ultimately rule, I am going to ask that question. So, it's really I think it's important not just to know the judge ahead of time, but while you're there, you need to be really, really an active listener. And again, it kind of goes back to what I said about have your plan and then be ready to, plan D may. All of a sudden, there might be something that reveals itself to you in this hearing with this judge that, could be the golden nugget or could be something that you better deal with or it'll be your downfall.
It's funny. I always say that to be a great trial lawyer, you got to be a great listener. But I think sometimes we forget that you got to be a great listener when you go in. And I think that is such good advice. And I mean, I try and follow it. I don't always do it, but I certainly try. And so Judge, I guess I want to conclude by acknowledging you, because yeah, you have been a mentor of mine. But I think what has come to my mind as you're talking is, I met you as a baby prosecutor, right? And you were a
You were
well-seasoned.
wise beyond your years, even then.
I don't know
Very,
about
very
that.
wise beyond your years.
I can tell you that all I remember thinking about after I left you was that woman is fierce. And I mean that in the best way. It was this fierceness, but it was this humility, right? I had a certain plea offer, and you hammered me with questions, and I walked out saying, that was the right thing to do. That was the right way to do it. And I was so in awe. The reason why I want to acknowledge you is because the fierceness has not changed over, we've now going on over a decade. And I've watched you rise through the ranks, and there's still this level of humility. And it has benefited me greatly in being your mentee. And I know that this opportunity to hear directly from you will benefit all the attorneys that have the opportunity to be able to hear you and listen to you and just learn. So
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you. Thank
Super
you. And
grateful.
I think, listen, again, I say it again, what you're doing right now is great. I love the fact that you are thinking sort of outside the box of how you can give back to the practice of law in Miami now that you're in this position. But actually, it's funny because making me think one more thing, because I remember you as a young lawyer, and I remember before I even got to know you, you already had a good reputation. And I think that's one of the things we always tell people too, like your reputation's important. But what you're reminding me is that judges also talk. Speaking about judges being human beings, we all talk. And if a judge that I love and respect says Marianne Curtis is great, before I've even seen Marianne Curtis, I'm already expecting her to be fabulous, and she is. So that's a really important thing. I mean, we all do talk. So having a good reputation like that's really, really important. But yeah, I mean, back at you, kid. I mean, if I mentored you in any little bit, then I'll pat myself on the back, because you're a great example of what we need more of around here. So spread the good word, and as I said to you, anything you need. I think I echo what most judges feel like right now, given that we're still in this weird trying to, post COVID, post sort of AI, trying to figure out how to do this work, and through a period of tremendous change. Our doors are open. My door is open. I really welcome people into my chambers to, let's talk and let's see how we can make things easier and better, and be proud of this system, and be proud of Miami. So
Well,
with that,
you're doing
I
your
want to say
part.
thank you.
So grateful, Judge. Have a great day, okay?
You too.
See you.